Hi, welcome to Shared Frequencies and the Space Between, where heart meets brain and life happens in the messy middle.
We're two best friends navigating a new chapter, sharing a space, finding our rhythm, and tuning into life's transitions.
This is a space for deep and meaningful conversations about growth, connection, and everything in between. Let's tune in to today's frequency.
Hello, and welcome to episode 17 of Shared Frequencies and the Space Between. I nearly forgot the name of the podcast.
I was about to say that's what our podcast is
And we've
called.
super creatively named this episode A Wee Blether.
Yes.
Yeah, so my name's Don.
And I'm Elle.
And today we're doing something a little bit different.
Yeah.
We are going to kind of do this one on the hoof.
Yeah.
As it were.
We are attempting to multitask.
Yeah, we are.
Because that always goes so well.
Yeah. It's been a busy weekend, and we booked in for the cinema this evening, and then realised that we hadn't recorded the next episode. So we are currently on our way out the door, and I'm not as prepared as Elle because I haven't put my shoes on. So
yeah, but again, that's very typical.
Yeah. That's me. So yeah, you're going to get lots of background noises today, and my shoes are deciding that they're going to be playing difficult today, and I don't want to go on my feet.
They normally slide right on, but now that we're mic'd up, they're a bit harder.
So that's it. I also will need keys.
Oh yeah, no, you do. We can't start the car without keys. I think these are yours. Yep.
They're mine. So yeah, we've not really planned out what we're going to talk about today, hence the episode title of A Wee Blether. So yeah, we're just going to kind of have a chat, see what comes out, and then just kind of go from there and see what you get. So, but first of all, we need to get into the car, and I'm aware that whilst we have wireless microphones and they will work if we can't hear each other, as I walk away from the house. Yeah, you take that. Yeah. Then that's not going to work. So, yeah. So, there we go. We're in the car and we're ready to rock and roll.
Although I'm not entirely sure we'll be able to get... Oh, gee. Yeah, so you're going to get a little bit of a narration of what's going on here. So there's a car parked just one car length ahead of us, but not parked properly. So I'm not sure we'll be able to... I don't know, we'll see.
I'll breathe. We'll have to breathe in.
And there's a van trying to parallel park.
But that's not even the best bit yet.
And yeah, just a few cars further ahead, and then there is someone walking on the road with a wee trolley. So...
Yeah. Okay. So yeah. Well, whilst we let them do whatever it is that they're doing, what are we off to see at the cinema?
Well, I think this is a prime example of what's happening in the street on a daily basis, right? People who... So this is a one-way street.
Yeah.
And people are trying to parallel park, but actually, they're not very good at it. So, yes. Right, what are we off to see? Today is the opening day of the new live-action movie of How to Train Your Dragon.
Yes.
I'm very excited.
I'm very excited for it as well.
I'm very excited.
Although you're more familiar with the How to Train Your Dragon series than I am. Franchise, yeah. Always feels like it cheapens things to call them a franchise.
Yeah,
but that's what it is. That's what it is. So, yeah, we. I will be dipping in and out of coherent sentences whilst I'm driving.
Yes.
To keep my focus on the important bit.
But to be fair, we always talk whilst we drive.
Oh, yeah.
We very rarely have music on or like a podcast on, and even if we do, we end up just talking over it anyway.
Yes.
So
yeah, and then having to, if it's a podcast episode, we have to re-listen to it because we've we've not
We're
heard
not
any of it.
actually paying attention. Yeah.
So we go see a lot of different things. I mean, this couldn't be any further removed from what we went to see.
Yeah, from the last movie.
With
Yeah.
clowns in a cornfield.
Yeah, a clown in a cornfield.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's a new it's a new horror, but it's very much in that sort of late 90s horror style where there's some really comedic relief
Yes.
episodes to just take some of that tension out of it.
Yeah.
It was definitely leaning into all of the different cliches
Yep.
of the
80s
sort
and
of
90s,
80s and 90s horror movies.
Yeah.
Which they played into really well, which was quite good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
it was a very enjoyable watch.
yeah, it was. So yeah. So that was it. And there's loads of new movies coming out. Maybe we should start doing movie review episodes.
we could. If we're ever short for something to talk about, we could definitely do like a movie review episode here and there.
So what's been going on since we last recorded an episode?
Do you know what? I can't even remember. Like, it's only been a week.
It's only been a week.
It's only been a week.
I have a full week of work under my belt.
You do, yes. So actually, you've started your job.
Yep.
You did quite a few, journeys and met a few interesting people.
Yeah.
Charmed some older ladies and...
Yeah, it was, for those who either haven't listened to the previous episode or I can't even remember if I said in the previous episode, I've got a driving job.
Yes.
Driving people job. Private hire car type stuff. I did that. I did coast to coast. I managed to do a coast to coast journey.
Mm-hmm.
I had three trips during the week, which on each of the days took up the bulk of the day, which was really good. But the most interesting one was the coast to coast one, where I had to drive to the other side of the country.
Yeah.
To pick somebody up to take them back. And I walked into the hotel. And I identified the passenger. I said hello and introduced my name. And she took a look at my name badge and she was like, "Oh, are you part of such and such a family?" Which I was. And it turns out it was an old teacher.
Yeah. I mean, your accent also, or dialect, or
Yes.
that will have given you away.
Yes.
As well. So, yeah.
Yeah. It turned out it was an old teacher. We had a really good 3-hour return trip and a blether.
Yep. Yep.
Which was really fun. But that happens to be a lot.
Yeah.
Way too much just to be
A coincidence.
normal run of affairs.
Yeah.
I have literally been spotted, identified in all parts of the country. I've even been on Shetland, which is about as far north as you can go in civilized Scotland.
Yeah, and as far removed as you can get from the mainland of
Yes.
Scotland as well. Yeah.
And I was travelling for a previous job on that one, and we checked into the hotel, and we were sitting having our dinner when the owner of the hotel came up and went, "Are you Billy's son?" And took me totally out of the blue. And it turned out that the hotel owner had gone to school with my dad.
That's so weird.
Yeah, and he identified me as being his son. I, to my knowledge, had never met the guy prior to that day.
But you do have quite a few of your dad's sort
Oh,
of
yeah.
looks. And as we discovered earlier on in the week, you're now also getting your dad's eyebrows.
They have since been tamed.
I didn't notice that.
Yeah, they have since been tamed. I went for a haircut this morning. I sat in the barber's chair and he goes, "What would you like?" I says, "I'll have a skin fade and eyebrows." Done. It is bizarre, and I've been at the total other end of the country and had the same thing happen, where I've met people who either have identified me through previous jobs or family or whatever, and I can also say with a great deal of pride that it's always positive.
Yeah, no, it's always for good things.
Yes.
To be fair, we literally just had that before we left the house as well, with a guy who lives across the road, and he does gardening work, and he's helping out a neighbour of ours, and he was saying, like, your friend, like, I think I know him from somewhere, but I don't know how. And I was like, oh dear, here we go.
As it turned out, we haven't placed where exactly yet, but there's a fair chance that there might be something that just ties it up.
Yeah. But isn't it? It's in those sort of like coincidences or encounters where you realise how small the world is. I mean, Scotland is fairly small, right? But like the world is just really small. Like, I think my weirdest one, obviously I have a very recognisable last name.
Yes.
And there's not a lot of people with that last name. But I've never been identified outside of the usual suspects. So my dad used to be a police officer in the sort of area where we lived and I grew up. And then when I was taking my driver's license, obviously, you know, the I don't know what that's called in English, the sort of test person when you're doing your driver's license, like the people who's in the car.
Examiner.
The examiner, you know, they see my name and they'll be like, and are you related to, you know, so in that way, like, it's my name. But no, the weirdest one that I've had, I used to be a tour guide or a tourist guide in Turkey, and I had a pickup one day, and it was two blind gentlemen who were traveling together, and I was picking them up in the airport, and I just sort of like took them like under my wing, so to speak. So I made sure they had all of the right information. I had reserved seats for them. You know, I helped them down to the bus. So they kind of sort of, especially one of them, sort of latched onto me. And when I returned from Denmark, I helped him out more and ended up working for him. So he's a blind piano tuner, and he travels all of Denmark tuning pianos full time. He is very mobile. He's super adventurous, and just like he travels, and he's a very awe-inspiring person. And I don't remember if it was whilst we were in Turkey or if it was when we came back and I worked for him in Denmark, but somehow we got talking about sort of like where, you know, I'm from and where he's from, and it turned out that the house that my mum and dad were living in when I was born is a house that his grandmother and grandfather had built and like lived in for all of his childhood, which is just so absurd. And then he had inherited their wedding china, and he was doing sort of like a clear out, and he ended up giving me that wedding china because he thought that connection between the house and me, and I did need you know, crockery and all of that, so he was just like, well, this kind of belongs to you, sort of, because there's that connection which is really fun and I don't need it, and you know, so that's my sort of like weirdest connection like that.
I mean, I've had it abroad when on holiday, where you bump into a neighbour or a near neighbour or whatever, but that kind of makes a bit of sense, because if you're travelling from somewhere, convenient holiday locations abroad, are limited by your airport the airports and stuff that you can fly from.
Yeah.
And also the way that school holidays work, and etc. etc. People will generally holiday around the same time, but just the random, or what seems like random until you've had so many of them. It's really strange, and it makes you wonder what's at play in the world.
Yeah, I mean, like, depending on your school of thought, or that, like, the Celestine Prophecy.
Yep.
The book by, I always get his name wrong, but I think it's James Redfield or Redmayne. I think it's Redfield. But we can make sure that is added into the comments. The Celestine Prophecy is one of those books that, if you make it through it, really changes the perspective of your life.
Yep.
It's very, in quotation mark, woo-woo. It's very energy-based.
Yes.
It's very, like, behavioural patterns learned from your parents, and it's very sort of like talking about 9 sort of levels of becoming aware of energy and energy transfer and teachings and things. It's one of the books that I recommend to everyone.
Yeah.
But this book talks about these coincidental meetings.
Yeah.
You know, you meet someone and you have this urge to talk to them about something really random.
Yeah.
And a lot of us will stop ourselves from that.
Yeah.
We'll be like, oh, this is really weird. Why do I want to talk to this person about honeybees? Or, I'm sat on the bus and it's raining outside. Like, why is this thought entering my head, or whatever it might be?
Yeah.
But actually, in every encounter that we have, that there is a message or a teaching or something, that they have a message or a teaching for us, and we have a message and a teaching for you. For them, sorry. And if we're open to it, actually we can expand our perception, or in that way.
But even beyond the woo-woo, was it you described that
Yeah,
as?
I said woo-woo.
Even beyond the woo-woo of these things, there is a widely believed thought that we keep on doing things until we learn from them, or we find ourselves in situations to learn from. Which is, it's too widely regarded as something to be considered woo-woo, I think. But it's
No, I think it's just like in that book. I mean, disclaimer, the prose is horrible.
Yes.
It is written as a bad movie script.
Yes.
So it can be a bit difficult to read. I read it in Danish originally, and I thought it was just a bad translation. So I was actually translating it from Danish into English in my head in order to be able to deal with it.
Yeah.
And then I was fixing the sentence structure and all of that stuff, and then I read it in English, and I'm like, oh crap, it's just actually really badly written. But the messaging in it is just so profound.
Yes.
But there are definitely some elements about food, for example, and your attitude to food, and how food is grown, and how it nourishes our bodies, and how we take nourishment from it, and how we, in certain exchanges with people, if you're with a person and you feel fine going into that encounter, but you leave and you're totally drained, or like you are in a fight with someone and your brain just goes foggy and you're like, I can't think straight, I can't, I am a fully functioning human being, and normally my brain is pretty sharp and I understand, but like when I'm talking to this person, my brain just goes to mush.
Yep.
And there is this, in this book, it's presented as, well, it's because there's an energy exchange happening, and some of these people that you encounter are energy vampires because of how they grew up and how they've had to learn to manage energy and things like that. So in that sense, it can come across a little quotation mark woo-woo. But you know, hand on heart, I believe in it. You know, I have experienced a lot of the things in that book, and it's just like, so I think that's why I find it so profound.
Yeah. And it's just like, you know, it's our meeting was, I would say, falls into kind of that category of
predestined.
I suppose
Serendipitous.
meant to be.
Yeah.
You know, and it was, for sure. And I said this to you the other day, that it was, I had a bit of a realization that the space that I'm in now, that we share and whatnot, I'm is possibly the most comfortable I've been in my adult life. I feel like I belong. I'm and I mean, that's not a new thing, but it was the why.
Yeah.
And I think it was, and it's because my whole life I've been made to feel like I take up a lot of space.
Yeah.
And that made me feel big in space, not just physically,
no, but
personality-wise, etc.
Yeah.
And my parents adored me for that. They adored me for the fact that I could fill a room, as it were. But in doing so, also played into that. You can fill a room. You take up a lot of space. You're big, but not necessarily in a negative way, connotation, chat, whatever it be. Because in some scenarios, it felt like people thought that was wrong.
Yeah.
But I don't have that. I in the space that we're in with you and whatnot, I just feel like I am me. And I don't have to justify that in any way. I don't have to do anything with that other than just be me.
Exactly, and you don't have to mask.
That's, I don't have to mask. Yeah, that's probably exactly it.
Yeah.
You know, so anyway, we've just arrived at our destination. We've got a bit of time yet.
Yes.
So we're not going to rush off, but if I'm not entirely sure what background noises and stuff like that these microphones will pick up as we're driving.
Well, we will find out.
I had that, the why am I so comfortable, you know, with you and in space with you and sharing space with you, and ultimately that's why. So that kind of keeps things on sheer frequency topic a little bit. So that was probably my, aside from the, oh God, this is somebody else that I've met somewhere that's not my original hometown space. But you're right, it's a small world.
It is. No, it definitely is a small world, and I don't know, I kind of like that.
Oh, I do.
Yeah.
I do, and you said it, you know, like I a charmer, I suppose. You know, but not in a
sleazeball kind of way,
no.
But just in like really approachable and really down to earth and just really likable.
Oh, and I see that in the conversations I have with passengers. I see that in the conversations I had, a couple of conversations I've had this week with the guy who works in the in the office. You know, people just want to talk to me
Yeah.
about all kinds of random and sometimes really personal stuff. You know, and I think it's just about being, if you're open to that and you're giving out the right energy on that. Yeah.
No, but that's the thing, right? Where you end in some of these conversations and you end up taking something away from a conversation, and they take something else away from it, because what resonates with them is different than what has resonated with you. And you know, but I think all relationships are like that. Like, you know, even like romantic relationships that have ended, you know, some romantic relationships end amicably, and some don't. But I think that there's something to learn from each of these things, and even the romantic relationships that haven't necessarily ended amicably. I can't say that. Why do I try to say that word?
Amicably.
Amicably. There's a vowel sound missing there. But yeah, ended on a good note. There is always something good that you can take from it, and I think all of our relationships, all of our encounters, is an opportunity to learn something about yourself, or learn something about life, or get a new perspective. And like, I don't know, it makes me excited.
Me too. And it's I've always believed, and it was something my mum said to me at some point growing up, was that you get back from life what you put into it.
Yeah.
You know, so it's and I think that's, there's just been there's been a few instances, certainly in the last week, but over the years, where you kind of feel that actually that's bang on the money. That's bang on the money. Whether it's taking the time just to help an elderly passenger, you know, giving them an arm and walking them to where they're going, into the cafe, if they're going to have in the cafe, or into their home. Being nice, taking 2 minutes to actually think of how you can help somebody else, rather than being stuck in our own little bubbles. Actually, I think that's what it is. I think if you're not stuck in your own bubble, other things come in, other people come in, whether they be new people from the past, whatever it be. If you're not stuck in a bubble. So that's my takeaway for today. Get out your bubble. If you're not having these experiences in life, maybe it's because you're just stuck in your bubble.
But it can also be really scary for people, right? People who are not necessarily naturally socially inclined, like who are comfortable starting conversations with strangers, or letting yourself get pulled into a conversation with a stranger. And obviously it's also like how you feel on the day. If you've, you know, had a really tough day, or a tough week, or a tough month, or whatever it might be, and you don't actually feel like talking to someone on the bus, then, you know, there's and again, it's what, like, where's your social battery level at? So sometimes it can be quite hard, and for some people it just comes natural, like,
but maybe and it's just like, but maybe on that day where you're not feeling your best and whatnot, maybe and that person tries to talk to you in the bus or the train or whatever it be, maybe they've got something for you.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. That could be a thing.
Follow your gut.
No, always follow your gut.
Follow your gut.
Always follow your gut. And sometimes making a decision that makes you uncomfortable, if it makes you uncomfortable talking to someone, you know, a stranger or someone you don't know, but if it in your gut feels like this could have a potential, always follow your gut. But also, on the other hand, if you're being approached by someone and you're on your own, especially if you are if you identify as female, there's a different, and you're on public transportation, or you're in a situation where you're in a you know,
100%.
a taxi or in a public space and someone approaches you, you know, if you feel uncomfortable, please don't.
Oh, and that,
You
I
know,
actually,
and I think there's definitely a thing there as well with you being a physically large man,
yep,
cisgendered man, and me being a shorter cisgender woman. You know, I don't talk to men unless I'm in a space where I feel safe. So, for example, when
yep,
I was at work in Turkey, I always had colleagues around me. You know, I had their name, I had all of their details. So if I felt uncomfortable, I had,
yep,
you know, things. And like also with like bus drivers or whatever, whenever I was working in either Turkey or India and things. But predominantly it's actually, so it's women that I have a
yep,
lot of these coincidences with
yeah,
or encounters
yeah.
with, because then I feel comfortable having conversations with.
Oh yeah, I think this is a that's a area of conversation we can
Yeah,
delve
no,
in,
it was just
delve into a
the
bit
way that the
deeper. Yeah,
conversation
yeah.
was leading on, and some of the things that you were saying. I was like, okay, but let's
No,
just, and
no.
it got my brain thinking. I'm like,
Yeah,
but again, your experience is very different than what other people's experience might
yeah,
be, including my own. And even though I am a socially, you know, I'm open to conversation. Actually, I deliberately only have some of these conversations and some of these encounters with women.
yes.
You know, I have at least 2 Facebook friends, whom I have met on very random occasions. One was in a bus. One was when I worked for a summer in an ice cream shop.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
But they're some of the first ones to like whenever I put something up on Facebook, and like they comment on it, and like they
Yep.
always write happy birthday to me and things like that, which is quite nice.
And that reminds me. What you just said, it reminds me of something that I was learned when I was doing my life coaching diploma, and that was my world is not the map.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah. No. Absolutely.
my world is not. And everybody has their own world, and their view of the map.
Yes.
But no, I think no. Actually, that is a topic that I would like us to look at a bit more in in a future episode.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, because I think we've talked about it before, just the two of us. But I would really like to have a talk about it.
Yeah. No, we definitely can.
And our reviews and yeah, on the wider world. But
Yeah.
anyway,
This has been a very merry-go-round of
Yeah.
conversation. But this is what happens, right? This is what happens when you put 2 semi-neurodivergent people into a conversation together. Things will happen, and in what has this been, a half an hour conversation,
Yeah,
we have
give or
touched
take, yeah.
upon what, 5 or 6 different topics, and it's just naturally
Yeah.
sort of progressed, and then comes kind of full circle again.
Yeah.
We are quite good at getting full circle.
We are. And anyway, it's almost time for cinema. And
It
I
is
maybe
popcorn time.
Yeah, I was going to say, I maybe want to grab a coffee on the way in. So we'll bring this one to a close. So thanks for tuning in to Shared Frequencies and the Space Between.
We hope that today's conversation has helped you find a little more clarity in your own space between.
And remember, it's okay to be a work in progress. We're all just figuring it out, one frequency at a time.
If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, or share it with someone who might also want to hear it.
So until next time, keep tuning in and finding the space that works for you.
Thank
Goodbye.
you.